No matter what your creed, the big guy upstairs is still in the business of performing miracles. With a mortality rate estimated around 4 to 5%, the COVID-19 is not the deadliest pandemic to hit the world. However, it's not a virus to be trifled with, as its mortality rate is 10 times higher than the average in senior citizens, and people who have serious underlying medical conditions run a higher risk of severe illness. In this video, we're going to share some of the most miraculous COVID-19 recoveries during lockdown. Seeing survivors of the coronavirus is not an uncommon phenomenon. However, there were some recoveries that had us screaming hallelujah. Today, we've compiled a list of these recoveries to share with you. Before we get into that, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for more ridiculous content. Let's get into it. The recovery of 74-year-old Glen Perkins. 20 days on a ventilator and several healing therapies later, Patty Seguta's father had plateaued, and the staff of St. Luke's Warren Hospital was at its wit's end. There seemed to be no hope, so the hospital had placed a call to Mr. Perkins' family to deliver the devastating news. According to Patty, the rest of that dreadful call was spent discussing the end-of-life care. The news had left the family heartbroken and in tears, struggling to accept the fact that their father wouldn't be around anymore. Funeral preparations were already being made when the family heard about plasma therapy, a procedure that involves the infusion of blood plasma from another virus-recovered patient into the patient undergoing the therapy. In one last bid to save their father's life, the family asked St. Luke about it, and this is where it becomes a lockdown miracle. Luck shined on them, and some donated plasma just happened to become available at the hospital in that critical time, and they gave it a shot. After the treatment, he began to improve, and they were able to take him off ventilators. Gradually, Mr. Perkins began to get better and better. In an interview in April, the family said there were talks of him returning home. Considering the timing of this incident, it definitely checks out as an Easter miracle. The World War II veteran who recovered just in time for his 104th birthday. No matter how old your dad is, nothing prepares you for the feeling of losing him during a pandemic, or losing him at all, really. This would have been the fate of the children of centenarian World War II veteran Bill Lapshies, who tested positive for the coronavirus early in March at the age of 103, if his miraculous recovery hadn't taken place. Older people are more vulnerable to severe illnesses when infected. This is why the family of Mr. Lapshies had their hearts in their mouths for the entire duration of his treatment. He was among the pioneer patients of the coronavirus in his then residence, the Edward C. Allworth Veterans Home. When it was detected, he was confined to his room where he was attended to. The time Mr. Lapshies spent isolated in his room receiving treatment was full of highs and lows for himself and his family. Some days it looked like there was hope, as he would be cheerful and smiling while they stared at him through the window, and some days his condition declined and it looked like this wasn't a battle he was going to win. According to his family, his condition got really critical at a point, and after that came the light at the end of the tunnel. He began to recover. When his birthday on April 1st came, the centenarian was fully recovered and ready to party. He just won a war against the coronavirus. Talk about the greatest birthday miracles of all time. Have you ever had a birthday miracle? If you have, tell us about it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. The recovery of a Fayette County man. The greatest fear of Kathy Thought, daughter of 89-year-old Jim Thought, was that her father would die alone and her mother, Mary Ellen, would be unable to say goodbye before it happened. Mr. Jim Thought had been living independently for a while he started exhibiting symptoms of the virus. The family man, who's been married to his wife for about 60 years, was admitted to Frick Hospital where he fought for his life. His health began to deteriorate and it seemed like all hope was lost. His condition got so bad that he was placed on a ventilator and end-of-life care procedures were initiated. His daughter, Kathy, was allowed to visit him to say goodbye, while properly clothed in protective gear, of course. Fortunately, Jim Thought was offered a second bite of the cherry of life when he miraculously started to recover. He was taken off the ventilator and finally tested negative for the virus on Wednesday, 10th of April. His daughter, who's a supporter of the Center for Vaccine Research at the University of Pittsburgh, shared the story to remind people that testing positive is not a death sentence and to create awareness about efforts to discover a vaccine to combat the virus. In my opinion, happily married senior citizens are the cutest. Do you know any? Tell us about them in the comments below. The recovery of the 17-day-old baby Xiao Xiao in China. Xiao Xiao is the youngest COVID-19 survivor. According to media reports, she contracted the virus from her mother at birth. Shortly after she was born, she tested positive for the virus in Wuhan Children's Hospital. In an interview with BBC, Dr. Zhang Ling Kong said the baby had an infection in her respiratory system and minor myocardial damage. Since baby Zhao Zhao's symptoms weren't obvious, the doctors decided against giving her antibiotics and opted to let her combat the virus on her own, with only treatment for her myocardial condition as an ally. It's our pleasure to announce to you that she emerged victorious and was discharged shortly after making a full recovery. What a miracle! The recovery of 99-year-old Betty Draper. Draper strong, 99, stronger than COVID-19. These were some of the wordings on the homemade signs that were used in the homecoming celebration of the 99-year-old woman who defeated COVID-19 earlier in April. In an interview with the State Journal-Register, her 57-year-old youngest son quoted one of her statements while she was still sick. He said, "When she wasn't feeling well, she told me, 'If it's my time to go, the Lord will take me, and if it's not, He will make me better.' And her faith made her whole. Despite her age, she didn't even need to be placed on a ventilator. As a result of the lockdown restrictions, her family was unable to visit her in the hospital, but she had an iPad to communicate with them via the internet. When she finally recovered and was discharged, her son and granddaughter put a lot of effort into welcoming her home with a homecoming parade. The entire street came out with signs to welcome and congratulate her. Betty, on the other hand, was overjoyed to be home and feels extremely blessed to be around to celebrate her 100th birthday in September with her loved ones. The recovery of 49-year-old Elizabeth. Aside from senior citizens, the other set of people who run a high risk are people with underlying medical conditions. For Elizabeth, who is asthmatic, the hardest moment of her ordeal with the virus was when her mother had to look on helplessly as she was being taken to the hospital. She could tell it was extremely painful for her mother to refrain herself from rushing towards her. Doing so would have been disastrous, as her mother has a heart condition. In an interview with BBC, Elizabeth shared her story of how at first she had downplayed her symptoms and tried to self-medicate until she just couldn't anymore, and her son had to call an ambulance. She went ahead to share in detail the agony she felt and how at one point she was caught between life and death. Elizabeth was placed in a high-risk ward where she watched two of the patients she shared the room with die. Thanks to her strong will to live, the competent hospital staff who also gave her encouragement, and the support from her siblings, she was able to fight and win the battle to stay alive. Elizabeth has been given a second chance at life, and she intends to make the best out of it. Be thankful for life, live it to the fullest while you can, have no regrets. Remember, not everybody gets second chances. The recovery of Andrew Caulfield. You are a miracle. This is what the hospital staff say to you when there's no logical explanation for a 360-degree turn in your condition after being taken off ventilators. This was the case with 29-year-old Andrew Caulfield, who recovered from an acute case of the coronavirus. Andrew spent 13 days in the hospital, a week on a ventilator, and 5 days unconscious. During this time, his 2-year-old son used to FaceTime and call out to his daddy to wake up. And guess what? He eventually did. In an interview, Mr. Caulfield went on to say that he truly believed that he was healed by God. Divine healing. Caulfield went ahead to say that the time he spent in the hospital and the period of recuperating at home while making sure not to touch anyone were among the loneliest moments of his life. What do you think is the hardest part of the COVID-19 recovery journey? Let us know in the comments. The recovery of Mr. Omar Taylor. We've been discussing miracles all along, but this right here has got to be the miracle of all miracles. The 31-year-old survived the coronavirus, pneumonia, sepsis, heart failure, and a double stroke. I kid you not. If there was an award for the luckiest man alive, he would win it. Omar was hospitalized for 6 weeks and spent 20 days on a ventilator. At this time, his wife had already been told to prepare for the worst, so you can imagine how overwhelmed she was when her husband showed up home walking. He wasn't even in a wheelchair. This survivor received a warm welcome from their neighbors who came out en masse to welcome him. The Taylor family is very grateful to the hospital staff who cared for the father of two and Mrs. Taylor's friends who set up a fundraising account for them. Mr. Taylor has also given his consent for a study of his case to be carried out by research doctors, enabling medical practitioners to obtain useful information. Do you have a loved one who's been infected with the virus? If yes, our prayers are with you and your family. We hope you can draw strength from the miraculous recoveries we've listed and realize it isn't over until it's over, no matter how dire the situation may seem. With that being said, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and turn on those post notifications. Till next time, thanks for watching.